All right. Well, good day, good afternoon, good evening to all those that are listening, especially our European listeners here. It's now a little bit after the top of the hour, so we'll go ahead and get started on today's community call. And there's maybe two big topics that I thought we would spend time talking with Mav and Joe about. The first one I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about is the governance items that are, at least the posts that are having kind of the most views or the most interaction on the website dao.rocketpool.net. And then later on, about halfway or towards the later part of the show here, I thought we would talk about our favorite subject, which is the merge. Seems like we've been talking about that heavily, but there are just still a lot of questions, a lot of excitement building about it, a lot of node operators really wanting to know what exactly they need to do. It's all kind of coinciding or starting to really come to fruition here with Redstone, and then the merge, and a lot of questions, a lot of planning, a lot of things to do that we want to cover about. So, but let's start off first on the governance items here for it. For those that are in the Discord, Invis has a really neat bot there that has a new command that actually displays what the top interacted posts are over I guess a look back period of time on the DAO website, and there were 5 posts that it posted as kind of the top post, and I thought maybe we'd talk a little bit of time for it. And Mav, I might call on you for a couple of these, and Joe for some of the other ones. But the first post on there was one about liquidity incentives. Mav, can you kind of tell us a little bit about what that is, and kind of what the request is, and some of the discussion around it?
Well, it's definitely a big topic these days, that's for sure. So certainly makes sense to start here. I know it's something that's at the front of a lot of people's minds. I have to say I haven't done a whole lot of posting on the DAO forum yet, but I do go in and lurk, just as I'm known to do on the Discord. So I'm certainly aware of the degree of discussion that took place within a relatively short period of time. And of course, you know, it's a relevant topic. It's an important topic. Liquidity in itself is useful to have for any protocol, right? But beyond that, it obviously unlocks further things. So, for example, I believe there was a comment in there about Chainlink. You know, some of these other projects, when they're looking to partner with you, whether that's utilizing their price oracles or something else. And one of the metrics I'll certainly look at is volume, right? Volume is the sign of a healthy project. And in turn, partnering with someone like Chainlink, that can lead further down the road to other integrations. So I am certainly aware, and the rest of the team as well, of, you know, the interest around here. And I have to say there's some great discussions on the forum. It's good to see that even though everyone's largely kind of in agreement that it's something that should be addressed as a priority, it's not just a simple matter of, okay, let's go and do something, right? There's some good points raised about the need to kind of take care, and the fact that this isn't a free exercise, right? Even in the world of DeFi, money doesn't grow on trees. So if there's funding going into procuring liquidity, you know, that's a dollar that can't be spent on, say, reducing the amount of orange on the website. So all that said, unfortunately, today I'm unable to share any kind of breaking news around developments in the space. But what I can say is that it's certainly a topic the team is aware of, and I can share, while not really any specifics, that there has been work ongoing, including some calls later today. So rather a little bit unfortunate timing with the scheduling of this call, but yeah, some calls later today, and with projects around potential integrations or partnerships, right? So some of these some of these other industry players that might look at liquidity as a metric. So coming out of the conversation with them, I think that'll give us a pretty good read on where we are at, how much needs to be done in the space, if anything. And I would certainly agree, and I'm sure it's probably expected from most people listening and commenting on this post that anything done in this space will be planned out, and it will be somewhat of a gradual implementation, which is also an approach that I think most people are broadly in agreement with. We do know, of course, that shall we say, other similar projects in the space, they have considerable budgets when it comes to incentivizing liquidity. So it's probably important to manage expectations here, and that I can't see a path to to that situation. But that's not to say that we can kind of progress further down this road.
Yeah, perfect. And I wonder maybe if you could just expand a little bit. I mean, understanding we don't know the decision, right? Like, do we redirect or reproportionate some of the inflation to fund these incentives? But maybe I guess the question that people have is why is that liquidity important to Rocket Pool? Like, why should we invest part of our inflation or part of our DAO treasury to incentivize the liquidity?
That is, first of all, an important point in terms of where the money comes from. I'm not sure if there's I don't believe there's a kind of a high likelihood of some of the, shall we say, more extreme proposals in terms of ratcheting up inflation or cutting expenditure in other critical areas of the protocol. I can't see that happening, at least not to the extent that perhaps some of the proposals went. But to answer that question of the importance of liquidity, as I mentioned before, it's this the sign of a healthy protocol, right? If people are wanting to move significant volumes of funds around in and out, lack of liquidity hinders that progress. Also, I believe this was brought up in the DAO forum by one poster that incentivizing liquidity also helps to kind of get more eyes on the project. If through any of these DeFi protocols there is steps taken to acquire liquidity, the name Rocket Pool will be kind of seen a little bit more in this space. So that's also an additional benefit. I mean, again, I can definitely see the importance, and it is a topic that a lot of people clearly have some very strong views about. So I guess great to see that discussion ongoing, and I think there are a good few points for the team to kind of take away and review.
Okay, excellent. And then just one other thing, maybe, because I haven't myself dove deeply into this issue and thing, but did I understand from your response that there might be an additional revenue place where that incentive comes from, if not from the DAO or the inflation adjustment? Or am I misunderstanding?
Perhaps. I was just referring to those 2 points specifically. One being whether it's possible to, I suppose, significantly or considerably increase the inflation rate to fund this. So my point on that was that I don't see that as being likely. And the second point was whether expenditure in other areas would be similarly cut back a significant or a considerable amount to fund. I think it was referring to oDAO funding, and again, I can't see that as being something that would take place, at least to a significant amount. Obviously, the oDAO fulfills a pretty critical role, so it's important that we can acquire and retain appropriate people to fulfill that role, and part of that is of course the payments. So to go back to that point of money not growing on trees and having to plan and prioritize where funds are spent. Unfortunately, we can't have our cake and eat it too. So there is going to need to be some careful planning that goes around, that goes into this decision of how much, if any, liquidity to incentivize.
Excellent, Nick. Thank you very much for that kind of overview and introduction. The second most popular post up on the DAO forum was a proposal to increase the deposit pool. I don't know, Joe or Mav, which one of you would like to kind of discuss that one?
Well, that's a much easier point. I will pass it on to Joe shortly, but as far as I'm aware, there's general agreement on that, and it will be implemented, I believe, soon, TM, but maybe Joe has a little bit more insight there.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about this one a little bit. So as Langers mentioned on the DAO forum, the general consensus is, yeah, we've done the math, run the numbers. It seems like it makes sense. It's probably time to bring it up. And so I think we're looking at a short-term and a long-term solution. And long-term in this case is a couple of months, so it's not that long. But the short-term solution is to just make the flat value bump it up from 2K to 5K, which is what was supposed to originally be prior to the actual launch. And the longer term solution is to bake in a contract change to the next upgrade round called Atlas that allows it to be 5K plus whatever the queue of mini pools happens to be. So if there's 10 mini pools and there's a queue of 160, it goes up to 5160. So you can deposit that much in one shot, which should help with people that have a considerable amount of capital they're looking to deploy, like DAO treasuries, for example, or things. But they don't want to break it kind of piecemeal into these 2,000 ETH chunks because it requires some additional kind of monitoring and maintenance and doesn't offer a great UX. I think if I remember right, Langers mentioned that it would be a good first official, like canonical thing to pass through the new voting system that we have in place. They're just finishing up some of the documentation on how to set up like a voting delegate and how to use snapshots. And they have to write it in two aspects. They have to write it for like regular node operators, and they have to write it for all nodes because they're different users essentially. One of them has to set up a delegate, and the other one just uses the node wallet. But once that's done, I think they want to put that through the voting system. I'm expecting it to pass pretty much unanimously, and then we can enact it as a good kind of first test of the whole thing.
Oh, that's great news. Was there any thought about the advanced one also having the 5,000 be some percentage of the total locked value, or are they still just envisioning a number plus the queue?
I think it's just going to be a number plus that's what we're going to put to a vote to see what people want to do. The team is looking more towards the 5 plus the Q number as opposed to having it like kind of move dynamically with the amount of RPL staked. But honestly, we've been spending a lot of time talking about Redstone and the merge and things coming up, and less time about this one. So I may have some out-of-date information there. I'll ask again tonight and see if that's changed at all. That's what I remember last talking about.
Okay, excellent. Let's maybe move on to the third most popular post, which was a draft to, I guess, apply for an Optimism grant. And I don't know much about this, so I don't know, Nick, is this something you can educate me on? I've been kind of busy and haven't had a chance to even read this post.
I'm not sure to what extent it would necessarily be educational, but the last time I checked, the grant did proceed, and it got to the point of voting. Last time I checked it was pretty extremely skewed towards voting yes, as in making these funds available to Rocket Pool, which is a great sign, obviously. An indication of support for the protocol from those Optimism token holders who have voted. So aside from that, I'm not sure that there's been a whole lot of planning in terms of the deployment of these funds. I did hear that there were some concerns from, I believe, from the fund itself that that recipients were liquidating the tokens. So I'm not sure if there are any or what, if any, restrictions are going to be placed on those funds once they're received. But it's certainly great to see, and the I can't quite remember which who drafted up that proposal, but it was certainly very helpful, and clearly helped to get that vote across the line. I need to follow up. Maybe we can get it. Maybe I can get back to it before the end of the call in terms of the status of that vote.
Yeah, well, I see Jasper just came up here to the stage, and I know he's been a little bit more knowledgeable on this thing. Jasper, anything you can kind of add to this topic?
Hey, yo. Fortunately, I was free at this time for once, so happy to come chat. Just add a little bit of context to the optimism stuff. It's overwhelmingly likely to pass. One major topic that's got to be discussed, that is currently sort of being discussed, is who is actually going to be the recipient of the fund, literally, as in what address is going to be in charge. So a multi-sig has to be set up. So we currently just vaguely we're talking about it in a governance channel. However, some team member input what might be helpful. Nosha brought up a good point that this multi-sig has to be deployed on Optimism. We don't want to make the same mistake that Wintermute did, wherein the funds were lost because they gave an L1 address. So we have about a week to set this up, so it's not like an emergency situation, but that's something that's going to be important.
And help me understand a little bit more. These are actually OP tokens that the protocol Optimism would give Rocket Pool in return for doing what? Bringing part of our protocol to their L2?
We outlined specific goals in the original proposal, and shout out to Halzen.eth, I believe, who drafted this proposal. Largely, the goal is to increase or draw attention to rETH and thereby increase TVL for Optimism and draw utility to Optimism, as well as diversify liquid staking options to users of Optimism so they're not stuck with stETH. stETH is currently, or Lido is currently doing an L2 day, so it is important that we use these tokens wisely so that stETH does not recreate their monopoly on L2. I think we have a very fair shot at launching an even share given current liquidity numbers on the L2s. So it'll be interesting, especially given that the incentive amounts do not vary that much between the tokens.
One important point to add here in terms of receipt of the tokens, I believe there was some concern around the tax implications of receiving the funds. So that'll be also another factor to go into consideration. But very good point, Jasper, that we don't want to be making that mistake again. It would be a rather expensive one considering the opportunity we have in front of us. So I scroll back to find the deployment if anyone's interested or hasn't read the post yet. So 50% will be a curve pull, 35% Uniswap pull, and then 15% was Velodrome rETH pairs with ecosystem tokens and OP itself. So that's how those funds, at least in the draft proposal, intended to be.
There was an update. So I would go with the most recent you could find, because I remember there being edits and stages to the draft. There was a bit of back and forth in exactly what we would be receiving funds in. I think Uniswap was actually removed from the final proposal.
Excellent. So it sounds like quite a lot might be moving on this thing, and I guess the whole intent of this is we use other people's money. In this case, Optimism, the OP token. We perhaps use a little bit of our incentive, and then this attracts users to interact with the Rocket Pool protocol on the Optimism layer 2, right? And that's kind of the win for everybody.
Exactly the plan, in my view.
Okay. Okay, excellent. Yeah, fascinating. Thanks for sharing this one. I've seen it come up, and I've seen a couple of dialogues on it, but I've been kind of focusing on some other topics of rocket pool, so I just haven't had the time to really look at it. But it does seem that of the ones we've covered so far, this is very important in terms of continuing the growth of the rocket pool total lock value and number of users, and try to gain us a little bit of market share in terms of the liquid staked tokens. Let's move on to the fourth proposal here, which is a proposal to turn off the full node operator deposits. And Joe, I'm thinking you might be the best one to kind of talk a little bit about this. And one question I know when I originally kind of proposed the ideal is what switches do we have right now? I mean, we could shut the queue off, I'm guessing, but we just can't shut the queue off in the contracts only for full nodes. And maybe tell us a little bit what is a full node and a half node.
Okay, I can talk a little bit about, I don't want to spend too much time on it. Let me start by describing what they are and then the strategies we have and what we're doing with it. So for people who are fairly new to the protocol, when you create a mini pool, you have two options for depositing. The first option is the sort of canonical traditional one that everyone uses, which is the 16 Ether version. That's where you throw 16 of your own Ether into the pool. It does a couple of checks to make sure that you're not trying to cheat or anything, and then it will match that with 16 Ether from the staking pool to make a validator with 32. The second option you have is to throw 32 of your own Ether at the mini pool. And if you do that, it begins staking right away. It gets activated on the beacon chain. Once it gets processed through the beacon chain queue, you start getting attestation rewards and things like that on the beacon chain. So you skip the queue for the 16 ETH users who are waiting to get their 16 Ether from the staking pool to like match their validators. You skip that entire thing, you get started staking right away. The downside to that is the other 16 ETH you put into that mini pool when you did 32, it's kind of broken into 16 normal Ether and then 16 borrowed Ether, if you will. You are not eligible to get a refund of that 16 Ether until all of the other normal mini pools have been cleared, their deposits have been matched, and they have exited the queue. And then you're eligible to use whatever's left over from the staking pool to get a 16 Ether refund. You get that back, and then you can make another mini pool or do whatever you want with it. So until that happens, your 32 is basically locked on the chain, but you're only really getting rewards for the first 16. The other 16 is basically just sort of sitting there idle, not doing anything. When our ETH was very popular, and there were tons and tons of people kind of like throwing it all into there, just maxing out the queue earlier on in the year, this really wasn't a problem. But now that we're in a bear market and things have slowed down a little bit, deposits aren't coming in as fast as mini pools are. It means people that do 32 ETH deposits could provisionally take a very long time to get a refund on it, which is unfortunate. So one of the options, I believe this was your post on the DAO forum, wasn't it, Ken? Did you start this one?
Yeah, it was. And
you did.
I unfortunately had thought we could not only shut the queue to try to clear the ones at the end, we could shut down just the full ones, but I was only half right in that.
Yeah. So we had some community discussion about kind of what to do with this situation, because we ran into some support requests on our Discord for people who used the 32 Ether option but didn't realize how long the queue was. And essentially, they would be getting a refund in their Ether for provisionally weeks or months at a time. And this was, it's not great UX when you deposit that much capital and don't really understand what the ramifications of it are. So we talked about solutions around this. And one of the most popular, I think, that came out of the whole discussion, I'm not going to recap the entire discussion, but one of the most popular ones was, let's simply turn off the ability to deposit 32 Ether. From a contract perspective, that isn't as easy to do. That would require some changes. Changes require audits. It's a slow but secure process, essentially, but it's not something that we can just sort of like toggle on and off. But what we can do is we can change the way that most people interact with the contracts, and there's two aspects to that. The first is via the Rocket Pool tooling, the Smart Node CLI, and then the second is via people that don't use that tooling and interact with something like Allnodes, which has their own sort of wrapper for the whole system. So while we can't turn 32 Ether deposits off contract-wise, we can basically prevent everybody that interacts with the contracts in these canonical ways of ever being able to access 32. So what I've done is in the next release of the Smart Node, which is going to be 1.5, we're basically just removing the 32 Ether option entirely. So now when you make a mini pool, there's really only one option. It's just 16 Ether, and it's selected automatically, so you don't even get a choice anymore. And Allnodes has done the same. They've removed the ability to do a 32 ETH deposit from their UI as well. So unless you are planning on interacting with the contracts directly via whatever means you have available, if you're planning on using the traditional tooling, 32 Ether just goes out the window, which I think is probably good enough for what we're trying to do here.
Oh, excellent, Joe. Thank you very much for that kind of quick summary. And so this one, it sounds like once Redstone is out, and with the change that Allnodes already made, it might actually prevent any new person from forming these full mini pools. So this sounds great.
Yeah, to clarify, it's not once Redstone is out; it's once 1.5 is out. They're definitely not the same.
Yep. Thank you for that distinction. Yes. No, I stand corrected. Yeah. Okay, let's talk on the last, the fifth most popular post was one about oDAO membership, and I know that Rocket Pool has put out another call again for nominations for folks that should be part of the oDAO, and it does seem like we had a couple of initial invitees on the first round that, for a variety of reasons, never accepted or were in a position to accept the offer to become an oDAO member, and I think the team is looking for other Ethereum entities, right, where Rocket Pool can kind of give back to the larger ethereal community, right? I guess there's been some talk about perhaps inviting some of the ETH1 execution layer client teams that aren't represented, and some other thoughts. I know there's a talk about maybe having Anthony Sassano come as a member, and some other ones. Well, what anything, Nick, that you want to share about kind of the nominations that they're looking for, or suggestions they're looking for from the community members about oDAO membership?
I think this specific post, the oDAO membership interest is from well, it's one submission to become an oDAO member. So certainly, if there's anyone in the community who kind of thinks they might meet the requirements and would be interested in participating, feel free to similarly throw your hat in the ring. I believe that Dave is in touch with a few people for consideration. It's obviously not also not a quick process, as kind of mentioned before. It's a very critical part of the protocol. So really need to make sure that the members are well aligned with Rocket Pool, that they're fully aware of the significance of the role they're undertaking, and that they're willing to support Rocket Pool in this oDAO role. But obviously, these kind of calls for oDAO members don't come around all the time, right? So for anyone who's been involved for a little while and thinks that it might be something that they're suited to perform, definitely get in touch. And it's an open opportunity.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. Thanks. So it seems like for those that are listening, if you haven't had a chance to check out the DAO forum, it's outside our subreddit. It's outside the Discord. It's on its own website, and that website is DAO.rocketpool.net. So I encourage everyone to, if you haven't already, to join there, create an account, and kind of peruse their proposals. I really do see, as the governance begins to kind of grow and mature, that this will be a way that some of the more well-baked protocols start getting broader discussion, and hopefully moving forward to an actual vote at some point. So let's talk about now, if we can, the upcoming merge. Right, lots of things happening on there. Maybe Joe, if you talk a little bit about where we are with the client upgrade 1.5, especially with the release of the latest RC1 candidate. Can you get us up to speed on that?
Sure. So here's where we stand right now, both in terms of the test networks and in terms of 1.5. So from a test networks perspective, we have Ropsten, which has merged already, and Redstone is already deployed on it. And that's been sort of the post-merge test network for a while, which 1.5 originally supported. Now we have Praetor, or Gorley, which Redstone has been deployed to, but has not been merged yet. I think it's going to get merged in a couple of weeks, like August 8th to 10th was the last time I checked. That was around the estimate for when it's going to hit. So Gorley is kind of in this twilight zone, if you will, where Redstone's been deployed, the contracts have been upgraded, the new reward system is in place, you can opt into the smoothing pool and all these things, but you're not getting any actual priority fees or MEV yet, MEV. This is kind of a useful testing period for us because 1.5 as a client needs to be able to handle pre-Redstone, post-Redstone, pre-merge, and post-merge, like all these time periods. It has to be able to do all of this stuff. So 1.5, the release candidate, is so far our best shot at being able to support all of these things at once. It works on mainnet right now, and we have a bunch of beta testers that are trying it out, and I strongly, for people who are listening, the release candidate is only meant for testing on mainnet if you're not actively running a validator, because it's not 100% vetted yet, so I don't want to be responsible for any loss of funds or anything, but we've got a couple of people who are trying it on mainnet now, which is the pre-Redstone period, to make sure that it works there. We've got people trying it on Gorley/Praetor right now, which is the post-Redstone pre-merge period, to make sure it works there. And we've got people trying it on Ropsten to make sure it works post-merge. So it's all three of these different sort of flavors of network. And it seems to be working fine on all of them at this point. So I think RC1 is a good first attempt at this. As far as changes goes, the only real big change is primarily to the fact that like MEV boost is a thing now, and you can access that, so people are able to leverage it to propose blocks on Ropsten that have some MEV. And I've been helping the Nimbus team actually test that out since they were the last ones to add it. We've been going through, and I'm using the Ropsten validator I have on there to make sure it's working as expected. And so far we're 4 for 4 on Nimbus blocks in terms of MEV boost support, which is really nice to see.
And what test networks does that work on? Is it on Praetor and Gorilla yet? The MEV boost?
No, it's not on Gorilla yet. It will be as soon as it merges, but there's no reason for it to be on Gorilla post pre-merge, because you're not getting any priority fees, you're not getting any MEV or anything. So it's only on Ropsten right now. Once Gorilla merges with Praetor, then they'll deploy it, and I can add it to another iteration of the smart node.
Okay. So let me see if I get this right. We've got the client software version 1.5 that includes all of the merge readiness stuff. It's being tested on the test nets. It's being tested on mainnet without validators, right? What happens? Kind of look forward a little bit. Assume that the beta testing, the release candidate testing is positive. It looks good. Walk us through like, what is the timeline for mainnet now? Like what is the sequence of events that will happen between now and the merge? And in particular, what is it that a node operator needs to do? Like, what is Rocket Pool going to do? What do I need to do as a node operator? I know you guys are working on this checklist, but kind of foreshadow for me what I'm going to expect over the next 2 months.
Okay. I might slightly break rank a little bit and give you some additional bread, just because it's been a while since I've dished any bread out here. So the timeline is going to look thusly. So release candidate 1 being on mainnet means I think it's good enough for people to actually try testing and to make sure that it all works. It's primarily there to make sure that I've got the engine API set up correctly so that the execution layer can talk to the consensus layer. the EC can talk to the CC or the beacon node or whatever properly. And if all of that looks good and nobody reports any major problems on mainnet, RC1 will probably, like after a couple of little tiny tweaks here and there, make it live. The thing that we're predominantly waiting for is we're giving people time to test, which is important, and we are taking this opportunity to write a lot of documentation. So you mentioned this checklist thing, and to highlight what that means is we are putting together documentation, like guides, essentially on our guides website for node operators that operate in Docker mode right now, node operators that run in hybrid mode, and node operators that run in native mode, so that they can understand kind of what's going to happen, both with Redstone and the merge, the process of what they need to do before they upgrade to 1.5, what the smart node is going to do for them automatically, and then what steps they need to take manually that the smart node can't do automatically after Redstone to prepare for the merge and things and to leverage the new features that it provides. So I'm writing documentation for all three of those cases. The Docker one looks like it's done. The hybrid one, I think, is done as well. The community's reviewing that to make sure it's good. The native one is taking me a really long time to write because native's really hard. I'm hoping to have that out either tonight or tomorrow, and people can review. But we have comparably fewer native mode members in the community, but the ones that we do have are very savvy. They're very good, so they'll be able to really scrutinize those documentation to make sure that I'm doing it right, essentially. But once all the docs are out and they're live, then we will probably do like a go, no-go call. And at that point, Langers can post a new article on the Medium website that describes everything kind of as a TLDR, a high-level version, and links to the detailed documents for everybody to go check out. And then I suppose we can release the 1.5 client on mainnet and let people actually start validating with it, which will be pretty exciting. As a quick note, I'm out next week because I've got some personal stuff to take care of. So we're either going to do this at the end of this week or we're going to do it the week after. And it really comes down to the state of the documentation and the state of the clients and how much they're changing to prep for the Gorley merge and stuff like that. After 1.5 gets deployed and everyone has ample time to kind of review that documentation and make sure that they're ready for Redstone and for the merge and stuff like that. After that happens, the next big thing to go down is the Gorley/Prater merge, which is happening in the middle of August. Like I want to say it's the 8th to the 10th. So if you're on a test net, you can try that out and make sure that you're familiar with what the merge is going to look like for your system, what it's going to do, make sure you have Mev Boost working and things like that. That's all good. Then the next big thing that's going to happen is probably the Redstone deployment after the Gorley/Prater merge. I think we're getting ready to propose the contract upgrades, and the Oracle DAO has to vote on it. And once they have approved it with the vote, then we can execute it, and it gets deployed, and then it's live. So that'll be the next big thing to happen. I don't have a date for that yet officially, but unofficially, I'm sure you can figure it out. Then I suppose the next big thing to happen after that is the merge. That's mid-September, I want to say, the mainnet merge, and then we're done. On to the next big thing.
Yeah, perfect. We're going to have a question being asked here by Derek in just a second. But one thing I was thinking about, Joe, as you were talking about this and kind of the timeline, is that there's kind of these key waypoints or milestones between here and the merge, right? We're thinking the merge is going to happen in September. I mean, let's just say that now for the purposes of this call. There's a lot that's going to happen here in the next 8 weeks, right? In the next 60 days, right? There's going to be a period. I mean, a big milestone is the release of version 1.5, right? There's some stuff that I, as a node operator, might do beforehand, and then obviously stuff that I need to configure right after 1.5 gets installed on my node, right? There's that periods of time before Redstone is out, right? Then you guys deploy the Redstone contracts, and there's stuff that I can do or maybe should do post Redstone, but pre-merge, right? So I have to go in and interact and set up some settings, right? And then then merge happens, right? And it might be that obviously some check in on the node to make certain it's performing post merge, and it sounds like there might be some settings also that are post Redstone pre-merge and some ones that are post-merge, right? There's couple of unique time points here. And so I think having that timeline or some graphic that really shows that would be very, very beneficial to everybody listening to the call or everybody in Discord.
You hear that, Mav? Get working. Graphic time.
Taking notes. Obviously, a big thing that's going to be happening with the merge is the smoothing pool. So probably, I don't know if you had planned to talk about this, Ken, but it makes sense with your report being all of, what is it, 12 hours old. I saw you post it. I think it was overnight. Well, it was overnight for me. I opened it up thinking, it might be a few pages, and saw it run to 26. So I think maybe later today I'll put aside some time to just sit down and read through. But from what I've seen so far, I would highly recommend anyone listening in to have a read. Ken's done some great work on modeling how the smoothing pool will perform based on the number of nodes that you're operating, potential rewards, and it's essentially confirmed what I think a lot of us suspected would be the case, in that it is something worth opting into. And the smoothing pool is clearly a great protocol enhancement, and I'm sure that a lot of people will be availing themselves of that opportunity in due course once it becomes relevant. I have to say, I was also a fan of the formatting. Love the heat maps. I'm always a fan of that. But I see that was there someone else from the community who provided a bit of assistance? Valdorf, or
Valdorf had taken some early kind of shares of some of the graphs and plots in there, and I think really try to coalesce a lot of those that kind of broke it down and only showed like one aspect of the smoothing pool into a kind of what I call a summary chart that I think is my personal take is I think it's a little difficult to just read that at first, but hopefully people will have a chance to kind of read the report I put together. I'm looking for comments on it. I'm looking for any flaws in the modeling for it, but it does show a very strong advantage in participants in a smoothing pool having a higher likelihood of outperforming just running by themselves, a term I called solitarious mini pools, a little play on words from solo validators. But he created a kind of a nice summary chart, but I think it helps to kind of read the report a little bit, look at each little heat map or each little plot as it kind of builds up the argument, and then it's nicely summarized in the graphic produced by Valdorf. So thank you very much if you're listening for the contributions to it, and I welcome any other comments and analysis on it. It's a long report, but I think it does show why the smoothing pool will be such an attractive benefit for rocket pool mini pools to consider opting into. But and our speaker that had come forward, the person asking a question, had dropped off. So if you have a question, please just re-request yourself to come back up and look at it. But I do think that we're going to get a lot of questions, and it's going to be intensified a little bit because it sounds like a long way away in September, but maybe Joe, you kind of know this thing. It does seem like that, the team seem like they're ready. It looks like the date's getting firmed up, but there's still a lot of small things between here and there that I think that time is going to come by really fast. And many of the node operators are going to be very aware of the merge, want to be celebrating the merge, but they're going to have plenty of questions. What do I need to do? And when do I need to do it? And how do I do it?
I think that's exactly right. There are a lot of little things we need to take care of, mostly about raising awareness and providing the docs that explain what needs to happen to kind of assuage all of those questions and things. And just trying to get maximum coverage, maximum reachability, because there are people that up to, I don't know, a few weeks ago were still running version 1.0 of the smart node, and they just had no idea that there had been any updates and stuff. So we want to make sure that as many people as possible are prepared and aware for this.
Yeah, perfect. We don't want anybody to really to miss the merge, but I suppose one thing that happens every time there is a hard fork is if they don't get their act together in time, they're on the wrong chain, and they'll have to figure it out, hopefully sooner rather than later. But definitely be part of the merge. Don't miss it. So pay attention in this next 2 months worth of period here. Let's talk just a little bit, if we can, then about the forward trajectory. I've seen even in trading, people have posted the roadmap for Rocket Pool. This was a document I think that Langers had worked on maybe more than 6 months ago or sometime around that time frame, and it seems like the team has accomplished a lot between then. But I wonder, Nick, do you know, or Joe, do you know, is when do you guys have re-strategize and come up with the next roadmap for the next 6 months, or how long are these roadmaps for?
Maybe I can start out by sharing that by my understanding, the work that's been done recently, obviously centered on the merge, is a little bit difficult because and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's not simply something that the Rocket Pool team can just go out and crack on with and get done, right? Because it has to align with what's being planned for the merge, or also what isn't, and also the need to, for the protocol to be able to perform on various different test nets correctly. But once we're through, kind of out to the other side, looking forward to the next release, which is Atlas, and will be out for the end of the year. That will be a different kind of planning environment altogether, because it will mostly focus on what additional enhancements Rocket Pool can provide to the protocol. So in terms of future roadmap looking out post-merge, there's obviously a lot of topics people are excited about, SAS being one. As much as I can say will be in Atlas, I don't believe the exact details have been firmed up, but almost certainly. Other items such as LEB, certainly a candidate to fall under that release. But there's definitely a lot more control from Rocket Pool in terms of being able to plan that out for the roadmap. I don't know if you have anything to add or correct me on there, Joe, at all.
I think what I will add is when Langers pushed the original roadmap, was it like back in January or something? This was our first shots at listing all the tasks that to be on there and kind of prioritizing them. And since then, we've gotten a lot of feedback from the community about various interest in reprioritization of tasks and things. So, I mean, one example was like the pDAO stuff. We started building out the voting system, the snapshot system, and things like that, sort of in response to an increased demand and increased desire to have some sort of say in the direction of the protocol by the community and things like that. So my suspicion is we're going to leverage those tools and sort of the re-vectoring that we've done to try and produce these things. I want to say like maybe with a bit of a faster cadence, maybe just a bit more updated and things, as sort of a here's where we are, here's what's changed since last time, here's where we're going kind of thing, as opposed to just pushing one thing in January and leaving it. That's what I would hope to see.
Yeah, Mav, you kind of had me at LEBs, right? I mean, I think that's probably the biggest, afterburner or second stage boost that Rocket Pool can get. So that's great to see that those might be potentially on the planning block. But it is kind of interesting that you both brought up is kind of, you're in this kind of dichotomy, right? You've got the merge. That merge is an external requirement, right? It's set by the core devs. It's coming. There's so much to do in there, but at the same time, you've got to kind of look forward beyond the merge and roadmap to see what's next. What would you say, just between each of you, what percent of time are you guys working on items that are for the merge or pre-merge, and what percent of times are you looking kind of post-merge or farther down the road?
I'm imagining responses might be a little bit different. Obviously, for me, not being involved with the development work, I think the merge is arguably the most anticipated event in the history of cryptocurrency, right? You can argue about what's the most important, but in terms of anticipation, of knowing that there's this huge event coming up, the significance of it, and between now and then, the amount of attention that will be building, the amount of eyes that will be on Ethereum, that will be on staking. I've already noticed on crypto Twitter and amongst journalists in general that there's increased interest in learning more about these topics and wanting to cover the merge. So in terms of marketing opportunities, I mean it literally is the merge. That's the only thing that I'm looking at. What comes after that will be kind of a matter for I guess planning later on. But for me, that's really my sole focus right now.
For me, I would say about 600% of my time is dedicated to the merge and to Redstone as well, because they're kind of the same thing in this case. But it's a combination of bouncing between getting CLI support for all the Redstone features, making sure the watchtower is working correctly with all of those things, working on MEV boost stuff, and making sure that the client parameters and Docker mode are set up properly so that the execution client can talk to the consensus client and all of these things. That's basically everything that I'm doing. All the Atlas stuff is just theory crafting that I'm happy to partake in, but I don't actually have to do any development on that front yet.
Oh, excellent. Well, we've covered all of the items on the agenda here. So if anyone has a question, this is a great time to come forward and request to be a speaker or post it in the trading channel. I've been trying to keep my eye on it. I don't did a lot of posts, but I don't think I've seen any questions there. But to Nick or Joe, is there anything that that we haven't covered that you'd kind of like to share or bring up again with the folks on the call?
I have to say the governance topics that were brought up earlier certainly have kind of covered off most of the points that are being discussed within the community. So, it is great to see the activity on there, and would encourage people to, spend a bit of time on the governance forum if you haven't already. Even simply lurking like I do and kind of staying up to date on all these topics is very useful. And feel free to contribute as well. Obviously, going forwards with the whole topic about snapshot voting, what's kind of said and discussed over there will become even more relevant. It obviously already is, but even more so in the future when it comes to the power that voting will have. So if you haven't already, do go and check it out.
And Joe, what about from you? Anything that you haven't covered?
I mean, this is the main things I wanted to get out there were sort of the timeline, which we covered, the state of 1.5, which we've covered, how to prep for it and where to go to look for guidance and stuff like that, which I think we've covered. We talked about the smoothing pool too, which is obviously the most important topic there is in existence, so that was good. Yeah, I don't think there's anything that I need to talk about that we haven't already covered, but I'm happy to answer community questions about any of that stuff. It's mostly just I want to give this an opportunity, or make this an opportunity for people to ask stuff. And I'm happy to answer what I can.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I definitely appreciate both you joining again today on this call. It is interesting. I mean, I think I certainly spend a fair amount of my life in the Discord and on the DAO forum and doing work here. But it, even for somebody like me who's kind of taken the deep dive in a lot of areas, I will say it is incredibly difficult to keep up in this space. It's something I've heard a lot of people in kind of the cryptoverse talk about, especially the Ethereum verse. And now I'm really beginning to understand just how complex it is and how many moving pieces it is and how many opportunities there exist that even in the very niche world of the rocket pool community, it's difficult even for me to keep abreast of it. So thank you, Jasper, for coming in and explaining a little bit more the Optimism proposal for their grant. I think that looks like a great opportunity if that comes to fruition. All right. Well, let's go ahead and call it a day unless there's any questions. Nick, Joe, thank you very much for joining on today's call.